Welcome to another episode of Row.Team webinars, a series where we have a chance to speak to various coaches and support staff around the world, share some experiences and hear what they're up to and what their thoughts are on rowing and training and any advice that they have to offer to folks that are listening in. So our guest today, all the way from Rizhao in China, is Paul Thompson. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Martin.
I guess what would be interesting, this is so foreign to so many of us as coaches because I doubt that too many of us have ever actually even been to China, much less see any rowing in China. I've been fortunate enough to visit the country a few times, but it's a pretty unique experience that you're having. And if we start back at where you were sort of just before Christmas, because I know you guys were in Europe and then you moved back towards China. So tell us about your camp in Portugal and the turn of events that brings you back to where you are now.
Yes. Well, obviously we've been affected by COVID-19 and had to readjust our plans and our thinking and ways of working like everybody else. We were having a winter camp in Portugal. Our centre in Beijing, it freezes in the winter like many other places around the world. And we're in Portugal, and of course the virus was in China, and then it emigrated to Europe, and so we emigrated back to China. So we had 2 very good months in Portugal with our friends in Azul, as well as with Aviz, with Lewis Ahern's, and there's plenty of rowing friends that know that he looks after us well, and we had a fabulous camp. And we know when the Olympics are, but we still don't know what next year's program is. So so there was a decision made to come back and settle back into China and make sure everybody's safe and in an environment we know.
Tell us a little bit about the size of the outfit, which begins our conversation, the scale of what you're involved in.
Well, if you actually with rowing, there's a new president came in, Dr. Liu, in 2017, and there's been a restructure. So rowing and kayaking are brother and sister organisations under one umbrella and one leader, one president, and looking for a more database, more evidence-based approach, and a new way of working. And so as part of that, there's a strong foreign influence. We've got people from 9 or 10 countries here, from strength and conditioning coaches, rowing coaches, physios, and the like. And there's a policy of having one support staff for each rower, so that we travel with quite a large contingent when we move.
Okay. And just another little, I guess, to give us a sense of the scale, tell us about the momentum to form a men's 8 for qualification.
Yeah, so obviously the 8's are nations boats, and everybody sees that around the world, and so we've got our eyes set on qualifying as many boats as we can, just like every other country. And we come back, and there's a call to arms, and there's a lot of fury and a lot of activity of getting as many eligible oarsmen as you can, and the numbers are quite outstanding to us in the West. You get 100 guys turning up, and go through a series of tests and rigours and try to work out which ones are going to be most suitable physically as well as technically.
So you get 100 guys turning up, and it's okay. See what you can figure out with this group of guys. Yeah.
Yeah, on the whole.
Oh, nice, yeah, good stuff. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the training centre where you're actually based at the moment.
It's certainly a different way of working than all the best athletes, as it is here, are gold dust. But when you've got that volume, then you've got and Robin Williams spoke about this on your webinar before about how much you can put around the individual, and they're the ones you've got and away you go. And also, if you've got a few more numbers, then there's always that pressure to perform and the seats to go. And, both ways work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're part of, there's a Chinese rowing federation, there's a Chinese Olympic committee. Are they sort of one and the same thing, or how does it work there?
Yeah, the Olympic committee are kind of, like the government arm of the sport, and the Olympic committee and the funding body all rolled into one, and then the association is separate to that, and runs the rowing side of things. And then of course each of the provinces have got their own team, and as you would have heard, the national games are very, very big for the Chinese and for the provinces. So there's always lots of competitions for the rowers to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about World Championships last year.
Firstly, I'd like to talk about World Championships next year, which are due to be in Shanghai.
Oh, go for it.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, the federations were and this says something about the CRA as well. Actually canvassed all the federations to see if we could bring the World Championships before the Olympic Games, which for our sport would be quite a unique situation. And so, obviously we're very, very supportive of that concept, and the Chinese Rowing Association have been quite generous in being able to provide access to camps between the two events. And I don't know if you've been to the Shanghai course, but they've got two courses side by side, and they've been renovated, and I think it'll be a fabulous regatta.
Okay, excellent. Just to give us a sense as well of the scale of rowing facilities across China.
Well, I think there's 28 provinces have got rowing, so each of them will have a rowing centre and a course of different standards. Obviously, there's still and we'll get onto that a little bit later, the centre in Beijing, which has got a lot of Olympic legacy there. Yeah. And each of the provinces develop their own centres and courses. Okay,
so you've 28 centres.
Yeah, and I think there's I think there's 9 or 10 man-made courses.
Okay. So where you are at the moment is a sort of quasi man-made as such, is it? It's a piece of recovered sea.
Interestingly, I described it before to you for the UK viewers as the Milton Keynes of China. It's a new town, a new city, and it's in the Shandong province between Beijing, on the coast between Beijing and Shanghai, and so it's a new city. And as part of that, they developed a course. It reminds me more of West Lakes in Adelaide, but apparently was designed off Nottingham in Nottinghamshire. I fail to see the resemblance, to be fair. It's by the coast and quite sunny, and a very lovely town.
Yeah, well, both of us have spent a few hours in sunny Nottingham, and I guess Tom Kane must be completely at home there.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, and actually that's a bit of a segue for us, really, to move on to this part of the story, which was Asia's first ever gold medal at the World Championships.
Yeah, and that crew was coached by Tom Kay and Jiang Bo, and very, very proud of that. And again, it's doing the basics and getting your technical side of things. And Tom was certainly able to bring his technical eye, but not only that, he can get inside the boat very well, and he's a really good emerging coach.
Obviously, you have a fairly storied history. How many years in the UK?
I was 18.
18 years in the UK. 7 Olympic Games. So your first one was
Barcelona.
Okay. What did you coach in Barcelona?
I coached a women's 4 and a women's single.
Ah, okay. Wow. So you are totally a career coach.
Yes, for better or for worse. So to go back there, I had some really influential coaches myself. At school, Peter Shakespeare was one of our school teachers, and also had some inspirational coaches before him with Rick Allen. And Yeah, Peter Shakespeare got us well organised. I come from Canberra, and it wasn't a renowned rowing centre. It's the AIS now, but back then it wasn't. And he got a group of us together, and with our group and Dave Bagnall's group, we were the first to represent Australia in that sense in the juniors, and build from there. And he got me when I was rowing, and ended up coming off my bike, and I think rowers weren't as well supported then, and I thought, right, that's it, I need to go back and finish my degree, and he pulled me into coaching when I was 24, and we started up a talent ID project, a pilot one, with the AIS and Reinhold Barchi and Alan Hahn. And so I went round schools. This will all start to sound familiar, and selected kids that were likely to make it in rowing. And so I selected one of them, Megan Still, and was fortunate enough to take her all the way through to be world and Olympic champion. And so from that moment, I think I've managed to avoid a real job, and long may it continue.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I've tried that myself, mate.
Yeah, well, it's full circles for me as well, because of course, World Class Start came from Australia into England, and then you've had Heather and Helen and Anna Watkins and all those rowers, and Alex Gregory and those guys coming out of that program there. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of that process.
Yeah, and the shadow of Shakes is all over that, isn't it? It's pretty interesting, actually. The amount of athletes and coaches that he has had an influence on is pretty astounding.
Yeah, look, he's very passionate. He's a fabulous educator, and he's got the ability to really inspire young people.
Yeah. Wow. And speaking of young people, this was one of the things that you mentioned to me, was the amount of young people and the energy of the folks that you're working with at the moment in China. So we've got a few different people here. Obviously, we've got Steve in the middle, but you're surrounded by a lot of other folks as well.
Well, is he the young chap you're talking about?
Well, is he your boss technically? Technically,
yeah. Well, he's coaching now as well, so I told him he can be my boss in the afternoon, and I'll be his in the morning. But yeah, look, Steve's the PD and does a fantastic job there with alongside Dr. Liu, the president, and Mr. Xu, who you can see in the top left-hand corner, who's one of the vice presidents, and leads the logistics and coordinates the team. But just in the picture there, you've got strength and conditioning coaches, we've got translators, we've got assistant Chinese coaches, Steve, of course, a biomechanist, and a lot of these people are coming in, and the foreign staff and the Chinese staff see the opportunities that we've got. It was certainly one of my motivators when Steve spoke to me. I'm completely realistic about China. It's a challenging environment, and there's been a lot of foreign coaches over, but there's definitely a real drive and motivation to get this right, and to see that we can unleash the potential that they have.
Okay, so, and you've brought this up, and it's something that's always occurred to me, that in an environment like this, where coaches tend to be so descriptive with their language, and language means so much when you coach, the challenge of, if you like, almost having that taken away, and how, well, first of all, your recognition of that, and secondly, how you started to address that, or how you started to find strategies to work through it.
Yeah, and I think if you go to the next slide, Martin, there's some of the translation team, and whenever we change jobs as coaches, we have to reinvent ourselves, and there's new challenges and new environments, and to coach, I've always recognised coaching in a foreign language to be difficult, even when Reinhold Barchi was coaching me as a young lad, and we used to rib him on his elbogans and shoulders and taking a horse to the water and flogging it. that is completely me now. And what the Chinese do is have a strong team of translators, and they're absolutely fabulous. And that's not all of them there, but how you get your message through another person to the rower, there's a time delay. How you can get the feedback from those people, how the boat's feeling, how you want the session to run, you have to do in a very different way. And I was talking to one of my friends. He's with Skeleton, Mark Wood. He's behind a lot of the British success in Skeleton, and he uses drawing to be able to show the athletes what they need to do. We're fortunate enough to have ergometers, so you can show them on the rowing machine what exercise, what they're trying to feel, and go into some depth there, and then go and deliver it on the water. So you have to come around from different ways, and of course it's always better if you're making an effort to learn the language and use the language as well.
So how's the Chinese coming along?
It's getting there, kind of.
Yeah.
I can string a few rowing words together and order a beer, but so almost the essentials.
Yeah. It's just even thinking about it, the challenge that there is there to, if you like, almost have language removed from you initially. And I spoke about this a little while ago when I went to coach juniors about 18 months ago. And these were folks who'd never even picked up a boat before. And, typically you've got used to, as a coach, you meet your athletes, out on the water or whatever, you talk, you just describe you name the drill you want to do, and off you go. And in this particular case, these kids couldn't even get the boat out of the boathouse without my assistance. And you're like,
yes.
I've got to completely reset myself. And the words that were about to come out of my mouth, I'm thinking, actually, they don't mean anything. I have to completely do that. So you're at a whole other level. You haven't even got the language that you can back up into it. You have to actually work through someone else. So talk a little bit about, you say, like the drawings and the complete shift in mindset that's necessary to communicate.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it means that you come down to what is the most important thing. There's no waffle. What is the message you want to get across, and what is it you want them to do? And so the translator ends up being a good sounding board for that, because if you can't get them to understand it, it's going to be a bit tricky to get the rowers to understand it. And not only that, we're also we feel that the translators will be the next generation of fantastic coaches as well, because you've got to be coaching them to understand what to look for and what to feel for. So you're teaching them what to see, so that they can get the right message across in the right way as well. But so your preparation for your session is really important. So maybe there's a little bit more structure involved, and you have to make sure, because I've mentioned to you before, the coaches meetings, and my first few, I had trouble concentrating, because of course you say something, it gets translated into Chinese, and then the Chinese comes back at you at the same time it's getting translated into English. And there's 5 or 6 translators in the room, all talking at the same time in different languages. So it's quite a different way to work. And of course, every meeting you have takes twice as long as it goes from English, and English is the other language, even though we have people from other nations. So so that always takes longer. So and I've spoken about this with Fiona, my translator. You can't speak for too long, because it just has to be so clear, because they switch off when the English is going on. They don't know what it is, and so they're looking to see who's doing what and what's happening in the boathouse and what's going on. So you really need to make sure that you're working in short, sharp sets, so that the concentration stays on.
Yeah, cool. All right, we'll jump onto these next couple of slides, which give us a little bit of context around the training center that's in Beijing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's see if this is actually going to work for us. I'm hoping that is...
Yeah, got the sound.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you were initially based in this training centre?
Correct. So this is the centre in Beijing. Those that were at the Olympics in Beijing will recognise the course, and you know, not only you saw the course at the beginning, but you know, you've got restaurants down the side there now. You've got a training centre. There's a water sports centre, an ice skating rink. So there's been some real legacy for you know, an Olympic legacy is there. So you know, we've got the kayaks and the kayakers and the rowers training there at different times of the year.
Isn't that interesting? Because you know, I guess at times I heard, and obviously ill-informed, that you know, the course had been filled in and it was part of, you know, greater Beijing development or whatever. And of course, that's not the case at all.
Yeah, as in lots of countries, you know, there's lots of myths and ideas, and you know, it's like that with China, that most of the prejudice are wrong, both in the negative and the positive way. And you know, having some good conversations with Tom Kay about that. But you know, they've done an outstanding job developing that as both as a centre, but also you know, they had a roller skating competition going around there one day, and fun runs and festivals and kite flying, and you know,
that segues us onto this next one, I guess.
Yeah. I received this one.
2号到秘书处黄洋 Attention Go.
So yeah, that was in January this year, and that's why we're not in Beijing.
Yeah, a little bit, but they certainly use the facilities then.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, cool. So you were in Beijing, and now you have moved to where you are, and is where you are now currently supposed to be the home base as such?
Yeah, well, we're going to be based here for a while. Like everybody else, as I was saying before, we're still waiting on visa to what regattas are available. Like John Keogh was saying, you know, will everything be clear by the head of the Charles? So we're waiting to see. But to be honest, you know, my gut feel is that international travel is going to be the last thing to open up, and so we're looking at, you know, some internal competitions and national championships and mm-hmm. what have you through the season here. And of course, you know, that's assuming that you can move internally as well, which isn't the case at the moment.
Yeah, it is difficult to see how we're going to have a level playing field for the athletes even by next year, realistically.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, we can't see much international travel, so it's going to be, you know, it's quite a fundamental step there. But,
yeah. So I'm just, I've got this bit of video of, well, you could talk us through this. Hopefully, it's going to play okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of flagship crews. You know, we feel we're a team on the rise, and this is the women's quad, who's coached by Xian Rose. And she's, you know, she's done a fabulous job with that, and you would have seen them at the World Championships in Linz and through the season. You know, they were completely dominant through all the World Cups, Henley, of course, and the World Championships. And you know, they're a very strong crew and one of two of our flagship boats.
Okay. And would you describe, how would you just give us a sense of the training program or regime? Is it pretty similar to what you've worked with previously?
Yeah, obviously there's, yes. The Chinese rowers come through sports schools on the whole, although that's changing. It's opening up to universities and clubs. So that is a move. But yeah, you know, look, as we've all been saying, 2,000 metre racing, it's 80% aerobic, it's 20% anaerobic, and you know, that's the breakup of the training for a rule of thumb. And, you know, they do lots of miles and lots of long distance. Rose, the coach, was China's most successful sculler. She was in the 93 women's quad that won their first gold medal.
Okay.
And she coached the next one.
Okay. And you're coaching the 4, is that correct?
I'm doing the head coach, and for this season be coaching in the women's sweep, and that's some of the rowers training in Portugal.
Okay. And then of course we have these 2 athletes who have already set some records by being the first Asian crew to win a world championship, correct?
Yeah, a heavyweight men's world championship. Yeah.
So
that's really significant for us. And you know, Zhang Liang, the stroke man, he's been to 1, 2 Olympics already, and you know, Tom and Zhang have been able to get them working better together, and also building their confidence, because you know they're two really good guys. And you know, it's quite open, the men's double, as we discussed, you know, with the Irish coming onto the scene and the Chinese on the scene as well. And you know, these guys didn't have such a consistent World Cup series. They did well in Plovdiv. And then at Rotterdam had an injury. Poznan, they had a tough semi-final, but then you know they were all set for the World Championships.
Mm. And just as I'm watching this, it does pose the question to me. So you arrive in this new environment, you have all these challenges around language and communication. Technically, what went through your mind in the sense of, okay, here's what I need to begin to do?
Okay, well, the thing that stood out is they like to rate higher with not a lot of power in the water. So, you know, we introduced some ergometer work and reflected that in some of the pieces they do on the water to try and lengthen the stroke and the power per stroke. And that appeared to have some impact there. So again, you know, I went in there and I was quite clear about it. You know, you've got 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth, so make sure you use them in that proportion. So, you know, it was able to work to develop a training rhythm and a training base, because, you know, I started working with the, I started coming over in January, and it wasn't until March that I came over. So I was well aware that, you know, a lot of the winter had already been done and some good work done by the coaches and the team there. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have a bit more evolution than revolution.
Okay. And
yeah, so to answer your question, to always come back to first principles. You know, what moves the boat, and at the most fundamental level, we need to apply the power to push the boat as far as we can during the drive phase, and then the boat works against the water resistance and the wind resistance. So how do you minimize that? And then of course you need to be in a rhythm, and to do that there's definitely, you know, the technical framework, if you like, or the technical model, and everybody's different. And these guys are no different. If you look at the leg drive, it's very, very strong. And their legs and hips working, and you know, there's some extra movements in there, but the fundamentals that move the boat were really strong. And I know Tom and Jiang were convincing them to relax a little more. That's Fon Song in Chinese, just for your reference next time you need it, Martin. To get a bit more relaxation in the boat and let the boat do some work. And you know, like all the coaches, you know, it's a boat race after all, and that's the thing. We need to make sure that they're moving the most effectively and efficiently.
Okay. And what type of results, the athlete in the stroke seat, like you say, he'd been to 2 games. What type of results had he had previously?
Well, quite mixed results, to be fair. Very, very, I'll put that on the world stage, but very strong Chinese and Asian results.
Okay, so he was top of the pile there.
Yeah, precisely. So a lot of it's about scale. And, you know, look, they're really good people. They're diligent athletes. You know, they do what they're told. And that's a great responsibility for all us coaches, because the athletes, you know, they put their performance and life into your hands. So, you know, it's a great responsibility being a coach. So they're very successful domestically and also amongst Asia. So in terms, it's a lot about scaling up your expectation and scaling up your confidence to be able to be competitive with the strongest, you know, North American and European crews.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, knowing you reasonably well, you looked at the performance gaps between where you needed people to be and where they were. Can you articulate what you actually identified those as? So you know what the level of performance is necessary to succeed. You come in, you pick up this group, you're going, okay, here are the things I got to hit.
Yeah, well, clearly there's some, you know, targets on. We're really lucky. We've got quite a measurable sport. You can get on the Concept 2 website and see a whole bunch of world records. So you've got an international standard there that you can work to, and then you've got world best times as well. So you've got an international standard there that you can work to, and so you need to be able to set your training framework up to be able to be better than those, to be fair. And so you know, you need to that physicality. That's not going to change. We're an endurance sport. We go backwards. You get into oxygen debt out of the start. That doesn't get paid back. It's, you know, it's tough. It's hard, and your training environment has to reflect that. Otherwise, you're not preparing them for the race. So, you know, it's about making modifications within the training to be able to hit the physiological targets, hit the boat speed, and hit the competitiveness and racing skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this does brings us along another part of the journey for you, which is obviously working with the women's double 2012, and actually working with Kath Granger through most of her senior career, and if you like, plotting a path to success for those boats. And I think you said to me the other day that, you know, one of the things that they said themselves, or a goal for themselves, although they were obviously very physically strong athletes, was that they wanted to be more than just physically strong. They wanted to do everything well and to a high standard. And I'll run that little bit of video in the background here as we chat through that, if that's okay, because I was really impressed with what I saw on this.
Yeah, the story starts probably a few years before, like most things. But you know, with Catherine and Anna, who are wonderful athletes, fabulous athletes, and you know, for all coaches that get to coach athletes of that caliber, you know, you need to enjoy every second. It's stressful in a good way. But yeah, you know, these guys, they were smart. You know, both of them have got PhDs. They keep me on my toes at any time, and they were very, very compatible. You know, both technically, physically, and also, you know, mentally. So Anna's a very analytical person, and you know, Catherine is, you know, flamboyant and passion, and a little bit more impulsive. So actually they combined together in the training and the racing really quite well. But they had some really clear targets on what they wanted to achieve, and you know, a technical model as well. And you can see that you know, if we can get well organised off the finish of the boat, then you can let the boat do the work in between the strokes. But then most importantly, where the boat's going the slowest, you can arrive on the spoon and catch through the feet, and you're using your gluteals and quads to turn that boat around. You know, you saw some of you didn't quite get to the acceleration traces with Connie on your talk, but you know, if you can get that boat moving up quickly, which you to be fair, it was on those force curves as well. the boat's minimum velocity doesn't go as low, so therefore your median velocity level is higher. So, you know, to spend a lot of time on the technique as much as it is on the physicality is really important. You know, our sport is an optimal sport. You know, it doesn't go to the strongest. It just doesn't go to the most technical proficient. It just doesn't go to the experienced. You have to, the more tools you have in your toolkit that you've developed, the more successful you'll be.
Actually, watching that video where the girls do the roll-up place and then come back again, I wasn't rewinding the video. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and you know, lots of skills, and you need to do that. And you know, I'm always intrigued why people with their knees move from side to side. I mean, you'd never come in to do a squat with your weight on your back with your knees bent. So, you know, where do you get your power from? And so you need to be, you know, in balance in that quarter slide position in the recovery. You know, you've got certain reference points of the stroke. You know, the finish of the stroke, and there's plenty of debate about how fast you come around there. Either way, you need to finish the stroke off. And there's no point, you know, doing hours in the gym and being as strong as you can if your finishers are doing this and you're not getting the most out of it. And then, of course, the next reference point is the quarter slide, where you want to be relaxed, feel the boat running through the feet, and just be able to let the boat run as naturally as it can to you. And if you don't have your organisation and getting over into that position, the boat's going to be running. And you know, the margins, like the men's single, you know, 5 1,000ths of a second is going to separate gold and silver medal. Well, you know, where's that 5 1,000ths come from? Is it on the ergo? Is it how efficient you are? Is it, you know, you had a stray thought? You know, the margins are that fine that if you can get over there, then you're going to be a lot more control of the boat. So I, you know, highly recommend as many of these sort of exercises as you can.
Yeah, yeah, it's high degree of skill with these girls, as you can see. And how strong was that double?
Yeah, look, you know, they were very strong. Anna was 6.26 on the ergo, Catherine 6.31. You know, so there's no doubting about their physicality.
Yeah. This was Great Britain's first Olympic medal in the women's age, yes?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, right. 2016.
Which for GB was a huge landmark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about this project.
Yeah, well, this is, you know, we'd picked up some bronze medals over the years, and I was going to say that about Catherine and Anna. I'd like to come back to 2012 in itself, because the squad we were running got 3 golds and two silvers there, and there's some interesting learnings through that. But to move on, this group of athletes, you know, we had Fran Horton, who was coming up to her 5th Olympics, and we had a bunch of people coming in for their first Olympics. We've had some people that had success and then not had success. And again, some of them, you can see in the 2-seat, Mel Wilson, you know, she finished her medical degree in the same year that she was a silver medalist in the Olympics. So again, you've got to be flexible. Your talent's talent, and you need to be able to create an environment where you can get the best people in your boat. It was very competitive. We did 21 seat races with 18 people to get to the last seat. So you know, there were times where it was uncomfortable. James Harris did a fabulous job there, and it was great to work with him, a great young coach. So you know, I think technically there was some good improvement. There was a good mix of experience, winning, and a lot of hunger and desire. And frankly, they had a good culture and a good attitude to deliver what they needed to.
Yeah, well, they were an impressive outfit, and you could see that cohesion around the boat park as well with them, which was very visible.
Well, that was a really interesting race, that H race in Rio. You know, these guys in the first 500, the Americans and the gold and silver medalists were way back on the field, and then things changed completely as it went on. And pacing is hugely important in our sport. And whilst we need to do the miles, we need to make sure that you can get over the races 2,000 metres, to working out what's the most effective way for your crew. These guys weren't fast starters, and we could see that from the biomechanics as well. So you need to be able to get them into a position to be able to maximise how fast they can go over the 2,000 metres.
And how did they position themselves with regard to that? What was their thinking? How did they reconcile that as a unit?
Well, they just had confidence, really, and confidence is built through training. You need your confidence, you need to have your belief, and you need to have your trust, and that's in themselves and in each other. And that only comes through training. You've got Chris Shanbrook coming up. He worked with this crew as well, and we had along with Alan Watkins did some work as well. But Chris is a big one about getting the basics in and being able to develop it through training, and effectively that's what we all work to do. They used to call themselves the sassy crew, and they had a bit of sass about them. That's for sure.
I think successful aides often do that, don't they?
Yeah, well, you'd know more than most about that, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it also goes to show how much difference you can make in 1 year, and that's something that in the current position that we're working on as well. And sometimes it can be comfortable, sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but you can make a big impact in a short amount of time, and effectively that's making sure you've got good teamwork, not shying away from having the questions, asking the questions when they need to be asked. There's no use in an international season holding something back in June or July, having the result in August, and saying in September, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen." So a lot of that teamwork on how you build your confidence, how you build your teamwork, what your culture, what your training environment is, they are really key. And like the hockey team from Britain, talk about culture before performance, so that you've got a lot of those frameworks in place so that people can get the most out of themselves.
Yeah, and just going back to that, to Mel in the 2 seat, like you say, she was doing her medical studies, and in finishing her medical studies in Olympic year?
I think it was actually, yeah.
Okay, well, and that, it does...
It was just before, so, in the season, in the Olympic season. Yeah. Okay.
And I have a question here from Mike, who I know is in St. Catherine's. Paul just mentioned that talent is talent, and you need to be flexible. And I think that was around the issue around something like Mel, where she needs some time to do what she needs to do. And this seems to go against what many other nations prescribe for their athletes, and can be quite inflexible. Did you have to fight to have your best athletes to be able to meet their professional goals and rowing goals?
Well, this comes back to my point before, what did Mike Tatey say? If you want to improve your 6-man, get a new 6-man. The people that you have in the boat, you need to get the best people in the boat to have the best chance. And that's my principle. Would you like them there 24/7? Absolutely. But if you can't have them there 24/7, and of course there becomes a tipping point where, if they're only there once every month, well they're not, it's not going to work. But if you can manage people through, especially in an international context, the first 2 years of the Olympiad, and then be able to ramp it up towards the finish, well, you've got your best people in. You know more than most, Martin, if you need that power in the 8. So, if you've got someone that pulls a 6:15 ergo, or you can have someone with a 5:50 ergo in there, you know which one you're going to take. But in principle, getting the right people, and you want to steal a David Tanner saying here, you need to be flexible but not compromise. And I think as a principle, that's a really strong one, because just because she wasn't there doesn't mean she wasn't training, and just because she wasn't there doesn't mean she wasn't rowing, you know. And so and there was a lot of communication there. So, you know, it comes back around to, you know, do you trust them? Are you believing them? Do you have confidence they're doing what they say they're going to do? And, you know, if they're a mature athlete, they'll do that. Having said that, Mel's pretty special to be able to pull that off. To everybody in the world could do that, and, you know, that was very challenging for her at the same time.
Yeah, and if you're to work with, if you like to call them, a fulfilled athlete, if they're not feeling fulfilled at what they're doing, both training and professionally, then if you had them 24 hours a day, it may not work anyway, because they feel like they're under-delivering against what they personally want to do. And I think I saw that with people like Andrew Lindsay, who, you know, came quite late into the program, but actually just jumped right in and did what he needed to do. And people like Lewis Attrell, who, you know, went off and did a law degree whilst also training pretty much full-time and made it work. So that does bring us on to that discussion, I guess, around athletes and athlete well-being and trying to strike that balance, which is obviously becoming a topic, and quite rightly so for a lot of athletes, because and I listened to an economist recently talk about, if you miss a large chunk of your career, the impact that can actually have, and how we balance that out going forward, because it's becoming more prevalent as a discussion point.
Yeah, look, absolutely. You know, I still see it as a privilege to be able to row, and to be able to row and compete at that level. But there's no doubt, you know, there's an obligation to put people in as good a position as they can to look after themselves later on in their careers. You know what? I benefited from them having that philosophy at the Australian Institute of Sport when I was a rower, and managing, you know, into university and on the way through there. And I think that philosophy of keeping an eye on an athlete's future. Okay, it's a bit different in the West than in China in my current role as well. But definitely, you know, there is life after rowing, which is more than most. And the more that we can, you know, it's a great opportunity for rowers to have in between their rowing sessions. There's online courses. Technology provides so many different ways to do things. And, you know, frankly, it's healthy to be not thinking about the same thing the whole time, and have a diverse range of interests. You know, you mentioned Catherine Granger. It took her a while, but she got there with, you know, the time I was coaching her, she finished a master's degree and a PhD as well, and, you know, set herself up. I mean, she's a good example. She's, you know, extremely bright and capable lady, and, you know, she's chair of UK Sport and the chancellor of a university, you know, as she comes out of a rowing career. So, you know, that's not everybody, but it shows that it can be done.
Yes, and in a way that experience of knowing how to go after a performance, whatever it might be in life or in sport, to break it down and to persist. And if there's one thing you have to do in order to succeed in rowing, is you have to persist.
Yeah, precisely. And resilience is something that I think is undervalued. And you know, everybody in life has to dust themselves off, and very few people in a rowing career will go and win everything. There's always a few losses, and, you know, you've got to walk down the corridor of mirrors and take a good hard look at yourself and be reflective and come back and change. And, you know, we need to do that as coaches. You know, chances are you'll lose more than you'll win, and you know, when you win, you need to look at the mirror even harder to stay in front. You know, as Jürgen Grobler says, the loser always trains harder. So you know, those reflective practices, looking forward, they're valuable skills that we get in our sport.
Yeah, and that brings us on to a boat here that was under your wing as a coach in the UK. Obviously, Darren worked with the guys, but you were the chief coach of this group. Talk a little bit about these guys.
Well, Mark and Zach, and I think this is a fascinating, fascinating story. You know, Mark actually came last in the Olympics in Athens. He was in the 4. Literally came last, and we had a bunch of guys there, and you know, came in as head coach after 2004, and you know, again, looking at the situation, decided to really put my head in the bear trap and get them to change the way they're making weight, and which is quite personal to the guys, and be able to stabilize their living and training weight. And you know, that was a hard gig to get through, but we were able to stabilize their performance. And out of that group of guys, Mark was the one that was able to keep stepping as a and Darren was the under-23 coach. And I remember this. He reminds me of this. I went down and saw him, and I said, "Look, Darren, how about you come over and coach with us on the women and lightweight side?" And he said, "Oh, look, I'm a troublemaker. Would you really, you know, you really want to employ me?" And I said, "Mate, I don't know whether I'd want to employ myself under that criteria, but you know, he's a fabulous coach, and I got to work with him for you know, a good 15 years of you know, really good times, and he did an outstanding job with these two. So, but he developed Zach similar from a junior all the way through, and he'd worked with Pete Shepherd on that. And so you had them and Chris Bartley and Richard Chambers coming through as under-23s, and really putting pressure on Mark Hunter's cohort. And then, of course, Zach came through in the, so Mark was rowing with James Lindsay Finn. And that's another story, because he ended up becoming world champion while he was, and this is with Paul Reedy at London Rowing Club, working in the city. So we'd be doing half-hour ergos at lunchtime in the city. So, you know, there's many roads to get you to Rome, you know, and there's many different ways to do it. But Zach came through in 2006. He was the world champion in the single scull, world's fastest time. And so we knew we had some real talent. And, you know, Mark and Zach, they had a very good season in 2007, and they got the bronze medal, and that showed they could do it. And then, you know, they were technically very good and dominant, as you saw in 2008. And they nearly pulled it off after some time off for a medal in 2012. But just going back on that, Martin, and I think this is important for coaches. So when I came in with the women and lightweights, the other unpopular thing I did is I made everybody scull. Sweep, I don't know if you remember that. And, you know, we didn't have huge numbers, and to me, sculling is the fundamental thing of rowing performance. And if you can scull, you can sweep. And if you're sculling, you can have a competitive environment. And there's some guys, I was thinking about this, knowing I was coming on, and, you know, like James Clark, he stroked the lightweight men's 4. He came from Durham University in the single sculls, and he's out there matching it with Zach in these trials. It gives the opportunity for young people to break through. Now James came and did that. He stroked the lightweight men's 4, and then he won a silver medal in the heavyweight men in the 8 in Carapiro. And so it provided an environment and an opportunity that was challenging, but you could see it was very competitive. And so that made a big difference. And I think that was some of the fundamental work that got us the caliber of athletes that were able to come back in 2012 in the end, when we were able to you know, move through 2008 and then into 2012, come back with 3 golds and two silvers out of that.
I remember the sculling adventures, because I joined you down at Marlow for a while when you started with the girls, and you said, right, out you go in singles.
Exactly. I know it wasn't too popular with some of the sweeps, but you know, I think it was a very good strategy for that period. And you know, I see that, you know, for schools, for teaching kids how to row. You know, if you've got the resource, it's a fabulous way to go.
Yeah, well, in effect, if the boat is moving, it's because you've moved it. If it's not moving, it's not because the other guy didn't move it.
Precisely. Your responsibility. Exactly.
Yeah. There's no easy way out of that. It's you and you alone. And I think even sometimes in a pair, it's easy to sit there and go, well, I'm doing really well. It must be the other guy.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's takes through a lot of, we've covered a lot of ground there, because you've gone through this experience in GB, had a lot of success. Now resetting yourself to China, and a completely different challenge and a fascinating one. With all that under your belt, what would you say to the coach Paul Thompson, who was prepping to go off to Barcelona?
Yeah, well, listen, the same thing. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And look, obviously, I think I've become a lot more reflective. I wish I had have done that sooner. I've always taken any education opportunities that have come up, whether that's conferences, coaching clinics. I've always tried to do something to stretch myself. But I think on the whole, it would be make sure more reflective. And look, it's a people game. And as much work you've got, make sure you look after yourself, because you need to build those relationships. Earlier on, I could crash a relationship as much as build one. I'm hoping that, that balance changes a little bit more. Coaches for today with technology, don't lose the art. There's still a balance between science and art, because it's still a field sport, and trying to get synchronicity between people. What you feel and what I feel can be completely different things. So I think, on the whole, be more reflective. Make sure you're more observant, and make the expression now, be a lot clearer with what you're going to say, and then keep taking your learning opportunities, because I don't. None of us are the finished product, and I hope I'm still not finished when I go to McGrove.
Yeah, absolutely. So, without giving away any confidences, can you think of any sort of pivotal moments along the way where very quickly you've gone, or you've reflected on it and learned, I could have gone a different path on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in some of those stories there, we won 3 world championships in that women's quad in 2008. I don't mind telling you that we got silver in 2008, and the guy who picked me up from the airport, we'd gone 10 minutes from from Shanghai airport to tell me that his wife rode in that crew. Okay, thanks very much. We're making a good start here, and that as for the rowers, when we're talking about technique, I knew, they obviously had the speed, but not the efficiency. So that is something ever since then, is about the efficiency and the efficiency, especially through the front turn and how you pick it up. It's, that's a key part of the stroke, and look at it in a different way. And the other learning I have had, and I'll share this. I haven't told anyone else, Martin, so it's just between you and me. But
just
going back, yeah, exactly. Well, it was with Catherine in the single. She ended up getting the silver in 2009, and it wasn't going as well as what we'd like. So I thought, right, because I'm a bit of a rowing nerd, I went back and started getting through Steve Fairbairn's book. So there's going right back to whatever was happening in 1917, because they were still going through the same things. So going back to how other coaches solve problems and get to where they want to go, and sparking an idea or not.
Yeah. Well, that was the first rowing book I think I ever read. Steve Fairbairn's, and the basics, and even back then, they had a pretty good understanding of the biomechanics of what was going on.
Absolutely. And look, we're talking about a pause at the finish or keeping it flowing, and they're talking about orthodoxy or the Fairbairn style, you know. So, you know, circles and history repeating.
Yeah. Well, in the end, it is a cycle, isn't it? It's, I think at one stage I heard Robin describe it as, you know, at some stage in our evolution, we decided to hollow out a log and go across a river.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, someone figured out another way of getting a bit more leverage on that, and it just went on and on from there. Okay, interesting. So there is one final topic that we were going to discuss, which was around the UK Coaches Association. You'd forgotten about that, hadn't you?
No, well, yeah. Well, I've moved on since then. Yeah, look, one of the fabulous. I had a great opportunity with UK Sport to be part of their elite program, and you know, part of their coach program, and got to be in an alumni in a fellowship there, and we looked amongst around the coaches, and we went to we put out a questionnaire to as many coaches as we could get, and we had replies from 127 coaches from 20-something sports, and just about the environment and protection, and also a coach's voice. And there's I don't think this is just a UK thing. It's probably more amongst English-speaking nations, but you've got boards now, then you've got CEOs, and then you've got performance directors, and then you've got the coach, and the coach's voice from the decision makers have gone, further and further away, and the coaches are the ones that are out there every day and completely understand the environment there, and I think systems are missing, not getting more of a coach's voice. There's also obviously things as society moves on, and that's completely appropriate. 2,000 meter race, as we were saying before, it hasn't changed. The demands of a 2,000 meter race hasn't, since someone decided to race 2000s in 1892 or whenever FISA came about. And it's tough. You face backwards. You go into oxygen debt. You have to dig deep, and the margins are 5/1000ths of a second, and your training has to reflect that. Now, there's been a lot of bad practices in coaching, and there's a lot of good coaches. So we need to know the difference between good coaching, great coaching, and what bad coaching. But we also need to support the coaches as well. We've got to support the athletes absolutely with their welfare and what have you. But there's also a piece for that for the coach as well, because they're riding up and down the bank or in the launch for as many hours, and being away from their families and all the rest of it. Different issues. And of course, coaches can do it longer than what rowers do. But there's definitely a band there. So we set up in partnership with UK Sport and the UK Coaching, which was the old Coaches Council, the Performance Coaches Association. So that's got a range of things you can get from insurance and protection, and also into the UK Coaching Network, so that often coaching is quite a lonely business, and now with technology we get a lot of connection there as well. So I'm hoping, I was the founding chair of that, and I'm hoping it goes on to bigger and better things.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've certainly set yourself a challenge with that whole piece around balance and life balance and keeping the whole thing sorted out at the moment.
I have none of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you've obviously got very understanding people around you that support you to do this, and I think that's the crucial piece, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, we were talking about this, Martin, about coaches being people as well, and of course, without your family support, my wife Alison, and my kids and family and all the rest of it, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. Yeah. And it has a cost, but it's also a choice on our part, and we need to reflect on that, because coaching, it's and whether it's coaching at the top end or the bottom end, you know, people just are so passionate about it. You know, I saw that when I was growing up. You know, the guy that ran the old school club in Canberra, Fred Flanagan, absolutely fabulous guy. The energy he had was absolutely amazing. But he ran the whole thing for 10 or 12 years with very little support. And there's people like Fred all around the world. You know, I go to Globe Rowing Club and do a talk at their dinner, and there you've got Morris, you know, Coughlin, bashing them away on Poplar. And you know, we've got that in countries around the world. And so the more that we can support coaches and support them, you know, the better the sport is. Because a coach can either give you a good experience or a bad experience. And I've been guilty of both in my coaching career, but especially those coaches, when a kid comes down and goes in a boat for the first time, that is their experience, and whether they're going to come back a second or a third or a fourth time. And I think for all of us there, we need to remember that, because it doesn't matter if they're in their first stroke or their third stroke or their first year or second year or third year. You know, that experience, we've got a lot of influence on that, and that you know, it should be as positive as it can be. You know, sometimes that might be athletes hearing what they don't want to hear, but what they need to hear. But you know, we've got a great responsibility for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably the best message that we can really leave this with, is that responsibility that we have. And I love that analogy, whether it's first stroke or third stroke or first year or third year, is that if people end up loving the sport, then they'll, no matter what they go on to do in life, they'll have some good memories coming through the sport and what they got out of it. Whether, like you say, they won at Molesey Regatta or they won at Beijing, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have the time with you. We don't do this often enough. I know you're in a different time zone and so on, yes, but we'll have to stay connected, mate. I'm so interested to see how this progresses on for you, because it's a fascinating project. And if there's anyone I'd back to succeed in this, it's you, mate.
Well, thank you very much. And I mentioned before offline, but you know, well done on putting your webinars together, Martin, because you know, we do share a lot. We've got an international, we're one of the few sports that does have an international coaches conference. And you know, technology means that people like you that have got the energy and the wherewithal can put out really top quality coach education, sharing stories, sharing journeys that just enriches all of our experiences. So can keep encouraging you to keep going.
I'll keep trying to grow this list. You know, I'm sort of frantically here going, okay, I've got to keep going. But it's good fun, actually. I'm enjoying it, and the chance to talk to some great people. I mean, in the end, that's what I've enjoyed about the sport all the time, is the great community that we have. Paul, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye, man.
Bye-bye.